Welcome to It's Your Turn. I'm Brenda Florida, certified life coach, and no matter how exhausted, stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed you are, there is hope. You can start exactly where you are. There's nothing wrong with you. In fact, you're ready for it to be your turn, or you wouldn't be here. We hear words like vitality and confidence and empowerment and transformation, but what do they really mean? What do they look like in the practical aspects of our life? In the It's Your Turn podcast, we explore, learn, and put into practice practical tools and wise concepts for transformation. This is real life change, not platitudes. It's the intersection of the practical and the aspirational. It's your turn to make decisions that are aligned with exactly what you want. And if you've lost connection to what you want, that's okay. We'll reconnect it. You'll learn how to shift out of self-sabotaging patterns and tap in to the clarity, confidence, and vitality that you may feel like has been lost forever. It's your turn to step into the driver's seat of your life and embrace the power that is within you. So let's get to it. All right, everybody, this might be one of the most important podcast topics ever. Detaching from the outcome. It is your turn. You will not believe how much freedom this will start to create in your life. So this is going to be a really impactful episode today. And it'll be the sort of thing where you may have to, a little bit try it on for size and before you really see how much of a difference it makes in your stress levels. But it's the concept of detaching from outcome. Now, probably you've heard of that. You may know exactly what I'm talking about. But just to be sure we're all on the same page, this is how I think about it. So when let's talk about it from the other side of the equation. It's easier. When we're attached to an outcome, we get really invested in whatever we have in mind coming true, like that happens that way. So this can happen in anything from the dinner you're going to cook tonight to going on a picnic to the goals you have for your career or business, it's all things small and large. It's easy to get attached to the outcome. So we're going to go on a picnic, and without realizing it, I get really attached to that. Like I'm thinking about the time we're going to spend outdoors and how great that's going to be. And the family's going to come and whatever, all the things about this picnic that I'm so excited about. And then I wake up that morning and it's raining. And so we can't do the picnic. And the sort of level of how thrown off by that I'm going to be, how stressful it is, how much I spin it into a story of how things just never work out for me or whatever, is sort of the indicator, the barometer of how attached I was to that outcome. So my mom was so attached to all outcomes. So like in that example of the picnic, I mean, she would just be all over it, just like, oh, great. This always happens. Like it can be sunny every day. And then the day we want to have a picnic, it's not, and blah, blah, blah. And she would just go down this whole little negative mind spiral about, how the weather was out to get her, or, whatever. God didn't want her to have a picnic, and now we're not going to be able to get together. We're all going to be crammed in the house, just all the things. So if that example may not be your thing, but you can think of something else that is. A lot of times, like big life goals or business goals or financial goals or whatever that we set, which is great. Nothing wrong with setting a goal. When we get to the part about not attaching to outcome, it doesn't mean we don't set goals. We don't plan for things. We don't, intend for things to happen a certain way. It's that once we put out that intention or set that goal and start working towards it, we let go of the outcome being exactly the way we imagined it. So in my silly, but, appropriate too, example of the picnic, instead to be able to just say, okay, we're just going to pivot. And so what do we want to do? Do we want to do something here at the house? Do we want to go to a restaurant? Do we want, whatever. And we're going to still get together and we can still have fun. And there's still, sure, it's going to look different than we planned. But it's all cool. Like we can, I can adjust to this and we can change our plans. That's being not unattached to the outcome. Okay. So it gets trickier when it's something like, starting a business and your growth goals, your financial goals, or if you're in a career, you wanted a promotion or you wanted to be making this much money by this point. And when you're not, it can get really arming and you can get super angry. You could blame others. You could blame yourself. I've not done a good enough job, or my boss is holding me back, or the economy sucks. And that's why nothing's, we can get into blame. We can get into anger. But when we are unattached from the outcome, then we don't. Then we're thinking, okay, sure, maybe there's some momentary, or short-term disappointment or sadness that we didn't get what we wanted, basically. But I'm not turning that into some sort of negative story about me, or that I'm not good enough, or I haven't worked hard enough, or I don't know how to do it right, or, any of those kinds of things. Nor do I turn it into a negative story about the world, about, the universe, about other people. I can just pivot and say, okay, so obviously that's not going to happen. And now I just need to move on. Now I need to figure out what I want to do instead, or maybe we just need to make an adjustment. It's like I was saying to a client this week, that because we were talking about it's what inspired this podcast. And I was saying, it's like if you were to go hiking and you're on this trail and the goal is to get to the top of the little, mountain that you're hiking. And so you go, you have that intention, you're excited about getting to the top and seeing the view from there, all the things. But then you get, whatever, 2/3 of the way up, and there's been a rock slide and rocks are blocking your path. And so you can't hike the trail anymore. You're going to have to turn around and go back, or turn around until you get to some point where there's another way to go. Maybe it doesn't go to the top, but it goes around the side, or, whatever. Because you can't go to the top. But typically in a situation like that, hopefully, you're not thinking, oh, God's against me and that's why I can't get to the top, or I'm terrible. This is just evidence that I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not, whatever enough. That's why I can't get to the top. No, it's just like these rocks fell. I can't go. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to still enjoy my day. I'm still hiking, I'm going to still be doing that. I'm going to still see a view from somewhere, sees it, it's just not going to look exactly the way I thought it would. And that's kind of the best way to think about staying detached from the outcome. Can I be, happy with, or at least accepting of, a different outcome? Because if not, if I get too attached, nope, it has to be this way. It has to look this way. I have to make this much money. We have to hit this growth by this, Q4. We have to get this promotion by this age. By 30, I should be a millionaire. By 50, I should, whatever. And the way if you're attached to the outcome is if you can imagine it not happening and being okay, right? Like, just like, okay, well, I'm just going to trust that if I'm going to work towards this. Okay. It's not about not planning, not setting goals. I'm going to set the goal and I'm going to work diligently toward it. And if something happens that means I can't keep going, then I'm just going to find something else. I'm going to trust that a different way to get there, or a better thing to focus on, or something is going to happen, and I'm going to be okay. Because when we get really attached to outcomes, we can get really manipulative, and not necessarily intentionally so, not necessarily like meaning to, but because I want it so bad, or I'm so afraid if it doesn't happen where that will leave me, that I push too hard, I manipulate, I maybe stretch the truth or whatever. I saw this a lot. For those of you who don't know it, I was in real estate for like 30 years or so. But most of the time in management and leadership, I managed offices, I owned an office, I was a regional president. So I'm helping agents with transactions more than I'm actually doing transactions myself. And so often that is why I was the one who could come up with the way to solve the problem, because I wasn't attached to the outcome. Because we also start to lose our creativity when we're attached. When you're detached from the outcome, you can just be more open. You can think more creatively. It's not like a switch you turn on, it just happens. So an agent would come to me with a problem in a transaction that they just couldn't figure out. It's all I can see is doing this thing, or it's going to fall apart, or we've got to get the buyer or the seller to do this, or it's going to fall apart, and I don't want it to fall apart because I really need the money, or whatever it is. So they're very attached to the outcome, and I'm not, because I'm the manager. They're not my clients. I'm not having to engage it. I understand it's easier for me as the manager to not be attached. Okay. But so I'm not saying this in criticism of agents. It's just a good example of how this happens. And so I would be able to find another way. I would be able to find another possibility. Doesn't mean it'll work, but at least we can think of more creative ways to potentially solve the problem, because I'm not attached. So the more attached you are, it kind of narrows your view of what's possible, is another way to think of it, because we're just fixated on it needs to happen this way. And so when I detach, I can be totally devoted to doing it a certain way, but then I'm detached. So if something comes along that pulls me off course, or means that road, that door is closed to me, that's okay. I can pivot. I can think of something else. I might decide to abandon that and go do something, set a whole new goal, do something altogether different. Instead of going for the promotion, maybe I start looking for other jobs, or, I might do something very different, but it's okay. It's still just another way to get to the big picture of what I wanted. I wanted to make more money. I wanted to have more success. I wanted to have a better title. I wanted to, whatever it was, get with my family. And I was going to do it outside on the grass on a towel, but now we're going to do it inside at a restaurant, like whatever. So that being open to outcome, to be detached from the outcome, gives you so much power, because when we're attached to the outcome really has the power. We've given the outcome our power. And if we don't get what we wanted, we may internalize it and make it mean something about ourselves, or we may externalize it and make it mean something about somebody else, or an inanimate thing like weather, even, kind of a thing where it's like the economy's fault, or it's the weather's fault, or it's some other, my industry's fault, or it's the company I work for, it's their fault, or it's my boss's fault. Now we still may internalize it also and blame ourselves for different things. But this ability to get detached from the outcome and be willing to just change course is really powerful. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I'm sure you can think back at examples of your own life where you've been very attached to the outcome. And, if everything goes fine, great. You don't know any better, so to speak. No harm, no foul. But if something goes wrong, or something happens to interrupt it, and we're super angry, or we're super self-critical, or self-judgmental, or other critical, other judgmental, then we know we've gotten attached, and it just doesn't serve you, because all those things create stress, right? So sure, there's sadness, there's disappointment that we didn't get to do what we wanted to do. That's very normal. That will go through your body. You'll process that quickly and easily. But when we're attached and all the other emotions come on top of it, then it's not so easy to get over. And there's a whole price that we pay on an emotional plane, instead of being able to say, okay, I'm going to allow myself to feel that disappointment I feel. And now we're just going to find a new way, or set a new goal, or, whatever, move on. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I'd love to know if you can think of examples where you've done it both ways. And then think about something in your life now that you might be really attached to the outcome. Now that we've sort of had this conversation, you realize you're really attached. and think about the freedom and see if you can release yourself from that attachment, to let go of the fear and say, no, you know what, if it doesn't happen, somehow things will be okay. But again, it doesn't take you off your focus or whatever action you're doing to cause it to happen. This has nothing to do with that, right? You're still working towards it diligently, but you know that if something happens, you will either find a way around or over, under, through, or decide you need to abandon it and go set a new goal, whatever it is. But either way, you're going to be okay. And that's where the power is. That's where the creativity is. That's where the openness is. So let me know what you think, because I think it is your turn to feel that empowerment of not being attached to the outcome. I will see you next week in our It's Your Turn episode. Thank you for joining me for this episode of It's Your Turn. I've got resources and links in the show notes for you. But here's what's more fun. DM me on Instagram at Brenda Florida Coach and let me know you listened to today's episode. I'd love to connect with you. And then share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it, because I know you know somebody who needs to hear it. And I'll see you in the next episode of It's Your Turn.